Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Chatterbox programme. We've got some wonderful guests to share with you, and the first wonderful guest that we're linking up with is our very good friend Mike Locke, who is Head of Community Engagement at HEH and HEH Mind. Hello Mike, and thank you for joining us once again.
Hi Martin, thank you for having me back again. We were just discussing it's been a few months, so it's really nice to sit down and have a chat with you again.
So I'm sure we've got lots to find out about. So I guess a good start would be to just give us a general update. Tell us about the things that HEH and HEH Mind have been up to this year so far.
Last year we obviously moved a lot of our services to online delivery, and for some people that worked really well. It's definitely something that we are going to look to continue in some way with a range of our different projects and services, but we are hoping that kind of as we come towards the summer, we're going to be able to offer more face-to-face services once again. I think around the time we spoke last time, we had our safe havens reopened for face-to-face.
That's
So
right.
those people that are in crisis are able to go in and kind of see someone and sit down and talk to them. And I think that's really important, especially around that time when we're looking at kind of Christmas, New Year, winter, that sort of time when we do see people that are maybe a little bit more affected with illnesses like anxiety and depression, and also seasonal affective disorder. So really important that we're able to make that shift. We're looking forward to being able to have more kind of face-to-face a little bit later this year.
Okay, now just give us some of the services that you have available at the moment.
The best thing for me is for someone to go to our website, which is easthants.mind.org, because on there there'll be information about our different services. So we have services for adults, so people that are 18 and above, for children and young people who are 11 to 17, also for families, and we have different projects and support for workplaces, sports clubs and community settings as well. So if someone's able to go have a look at the website, that's definitely the best place to get the contact details for the right project or service for you. Or hopefully by the summer you'll be able to kind of drop in and come and see us in the Lee Park Community Centre, where we should have some staff gradually returning at some stage, but for now the website is definitely the best place to go.
Now, you touched on online services, and lots of support organisations have had those online services via Zoom and other ways of doing it, and it's been really useful during the lockdowns. Now, I guess there's a kind of a dilemma here, isn't there, in as much as we come out of lockdown, there's going to be the leaning towards opening up those face-to-face services, but also the online services are going to be very important for those people who are isolating or don't feel they can go out. So it's kind of like being split now between face-to-face and online services. So just run us through that.
Yeah, I think as we would have mentioned previously, kind of that shift over to as soon as we had that information about not being able to deliver face-to-face, we kind of paused the service. I think there was only maybe a week sort of intermittent where we kind of moved over to an online service delivery. And that is, like I say, it's worked really well for most of the people that have used it. We've had additional phone lines and obviously check-ins online that have been available for people as well. So that's worked really well. And I think for me, it's about making sure that we continue alongside other charities and projects to keep that digital offering as we move forward. There will be some people that need that face-to-face support, and like I say, hopefully we can return to that in the summer. But I think for so many people, kind of that online, that digital offering is something that we maybe didn't really invest as much time in the past as we could have. We're talking about platforms like Skype and Zoom and Team, all things realistically that existed a couple of years ago. I don't think anything is kind of hugely modern or new or innovative. It's resources that were there before. So it's about maximising our use of that. And we've had the last year to learn about how that works with our service users, with our supporters, and with our staff as well. So I think it's a really positive experience we've had in that guise, that we now have this additional platform, this additional way to deliver a service to support our local community and interact with people. So for me, it's about keeping that going, and then looking at, as you were saying, kind of that difficulty is potentially coming out of lockdown and what that looks like, that we're then able to offer those different options for people. So if they feel that they really want to or need to come in and speak to someone face to face and in person, that as soon as that's safe and we're able to do that, we're offering that. But they do also have that option to connect and interact with us online. And I think one of the reasons that's particularly important for us as a mental health charity to do is because some of the people we're interacting with or supporting might be more affected by those changes. They might be more cautious about coming out into social spaces, about leaving home, about going into some of the areas that we operate in within Lee Park, where some of our rooms are smaller or there are more people around. So it's making sure that they're comfortable, they're reassured, and they feel safe within the environment that's there, and that they know that we're only delivering it in that way as soon as it's safe to do so.
Okay, now, much has been made of the negative effects that the last year has had on our mental health. There are lots of positives which have come out from the last year as well, and I think you'd like to focus on them.
Yeah, I think for me it's that idea of looking back and going, in the last year there will have been things that we tried, that we did, that we hadn't done before. I mean, I did only give Joe Wicks one go, and that was one go too many for me. But it's about looking at, over the last year, what kind of things have we done that have helped support our well-being, that have helped kind of keep us positive and motivated. And a big reason for us to be looking at this right now is that we have Mental Health Awareness Week coming up from the 10th to the 16th of May. So it's going to be a big opportunity for us to focus on mental health and well-being. And the focus for this year is nature and the outdoors. And I think over the last year, we've kind of been encouraged, forced to some extent, to really make good use of that, to think about, do you have a garden? Do you have a park you can go to and walk around and run around? Can you do some gardening? If you've just got a porch and a parking space at the front of your house, like, how can you use that space? So I think we've all become a bit more creative and a bit more invested in those outdoor spaces that maybe aren't particularly large or what you would think of when you think of kind of nature and going outdoors and well-being. In my head, I'm thinking of a lovely forest, some nice big trees, maybe a picnic, but actually it could be about, like I say, using the porch or the patio or whatever outside space you've got. And I think this last year has been a real opportunity to recognise that. And again, I think it's a good time to reflect on maybe some of the things that we've learned and picked up, and trying to share those through conversations and encourage each other to keep on doing those things.
Because you've been told you've had to stay in more and not go out, we tend to appreciate how important that going out is. And I know lots of people who don't generally exercise, and when you've been told with the lockdown over the last year, you've got exercise time, you can go out and get exercise, people have thought, oh yeah, I've got my daily exercise routine, and they've never even considered it before.
I think we've had those different stages, haven't we, where kind of things feel interesting and new. I mentioned Joe Wicks earlier. Like the success of those PE mornings was huge, and I think that you really kind of saw that community spirit of people trying new things, trying to keep active. The amount of adults I know, I mean, I think it originally started off as kind of a PE replacement for school children, but I know loads of adults that don't have children that were using that as I now don't have to go into work, I'm not walking around the office, or I'm just not travelling and moving as much. So actually this is an opportunity for me in the morning to kind of get up, have a bit of a routine, have this kind of half-hour period where I'm going to be physically active, and then I'm going to kind of crack on with work afterwards. So I think it was a really good moment for people to really see that passion and that investment in our health in a way that was maybe slightly different to before, where I feel kind of in the past it's always been about, we need to kind of not be eating certain foods or watch our weight or do all these things, kind of undo all of these things that some of us are doing, and kind of imply like a negative behaviour. Whereas this time it felt very much like it's about supporting and encouraging people, and let's all get up and do this. And it never really came across as a negative thing. It always felt very much like a positive moment. And I think that's why it's important now to kind of reflect on that and encourage people to, once again, kind of think about how are you going to maintain your routines, your motivation, your energy and your well-being moving forward, as we see this kind of continued phasing of lockdown restrictions ending. We've had a year to really reflect on what do we want to do, how do we want to work, how do we want to live. And I think it's a really good time to look at that well-being from maybe a slightly wider point of view, rather than just it's got to be exercise and that's it. That was a great starting point, but now we're looking kind of a little bit more wider.
Absolutely. Now, well, when it comes to Joe Wicks, you can perhaps tell me and explain to me who Joe Wicks is after we finish the interview. I know for a fact he hasn't delivered pizza to me. That's all I can say. Talking about mental health, I mean, of course, the last year has brought great pressures on our mental health with worry and feelings of isolation, but it has kind of like brought the whole issue of mental health to our minds more, and we're more focused on it than ever before, which is also a positive thing. Now, of course, as we do come out of lockdown, slowly but surely, we're going back to a kind of normality, and the vaccine, of course, is a major part of that in making us safe, and just as important, making us feel safer. The fact that you've had those injections, you actually feel more confident about going out, so it arms you in that way as well. One thing that is going to be a problem, and I guess we're going to have to learn from moving forward, is we won't really find out how much of effects the last year has had on our mental health until we do start going back to normal, and those pressures are going to perhaps in some cases start appearing. Maybe people having to go back to using the office again, and going back to normal, and I mean, one thing for me personally, I've always done discos and karaoke, and as I prepare to go back to some kind of normality and doing those kinds of things, one thing that strikes me is going back to being more sociable again. It almost feels like it's a tightrope that you're walking, because where you're going to be meeting up with people you haven't physically seen for ages, you want to go up and give them a hug, you want to get close to them and chat to them that way and be as normal as you were able to be previously. At the same time, you're kind of thinking, well, I can't get too close, and if that person gets too close to me, I feel rude if I'm saying, can you just stand back a bit? So there's all sorts of things coming up. So how do you see the kind of pressures that are going to be on people moving forward, and those anxieties as we do come out of lockdown and get back to a kind of normality?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there. It's really interesting kind of hearing you talk through. I think kind of that first part when we saw kind of the lockdown start last year, mental health became such a well-used term. People were talking about mental health. People were giving consideration to what is going to be the impact of these lockdowns, of the social restrictions, the kind of the activities. We started here, like the going for a walk, going for a run, that kind of the daily allotted time you mentioned. Like there was a lot of mental health mentioned in relation to physical health activities. And I think for me personally, that felt like the first time I've really heard it spoken about so widely, so prominently, and having mental health as very much the focus of this is a health concern. We are concerned about the mental and the physical health equally. And if anything, it felt like mental health was being given prominence there. So I think early on that felt like a really positive, there is investment, there is recognition that this is going to be an area that people are going to be affected by. We don't quite know how yet, but there was that recognition. And I think that's what I hope we'll kind of keep in our minds as we've kind of had these changes to guidance and law around lockdowns over the last year already. And I think when you're talking about the kind of those social interactions with people at pubs, restaurants, gatherings, wherever, I think that is going to be really difficult, because we're now at a stage with the roadmap. I think there is quite clear guidance on what the rules and the kind of regulations are.
Yes.
I think that is quite clear, and that's really good, because it gives you a bit more of a positive mindset of, I get a sense of where we're going. It might change a little bit, but I get the idea. The thing that is maybe more difficult now, and I hope people recognise this, is that we will all come out of this affected in very different ways, and we will think and we will worry about different things, and we might not know we're going to worry about that until we get in that situation. Maybe it's been 14, 15 months since you've been in a group of people that is 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 people. If you're going to, I know there's some kind of large events planned for kind of the end of this year. If you're going to one of those events, if that's the first time you go to something where there are hundreds or thousands of people, be mindful that might feel a little bit strange. Like we've just had a year where, like you say, we've been told don't touch people, keep back. So I think there is going to be a gradual journey, and it's about having that open communication with people, about trying to be as non-judgmental as possible and being supportive and understanding of the people that we're around. That maybe I would be okay with a hug, maybe you would prefer a handshake, maybe someone else would prefer just a wave. And I think it's trying to read those cues, have those open conversations. If you're going back into workplaces or community settings, get a gist of what the people around you are happy with. I think that's going to be really important, because we are quite quickly coming to a time where a lot of the restrictions, I think, are dropping soon, and then potentially, I'm reading now that from the 21st we might see kind of the ending of the 1.5 to 2 meter rule, and possibly physical interaction is allowed. So that's going to be a huge change for people, and some people will jump in and be okay with that straight away. Some people will be okay with it, but then kind of change their mind after it's been a week, and you kind of get over that adrenaline of meeting people for the first time. So I think it's keep speaking, having those moments to reflect and see. While it might feel to some people that the especially the last few months, I feel like suddenly as we've come out of winter, it seems to have gone quite quickly through spring. But it has been a long time, and people have been affected in some cases very, very severe ways. And I think it really is important to kind of keep engaging with people, listen and hear what they're saying and how they feel about those situations.
As I prepare to start doing karaoke nights again, Martin and Lauren at the local pub, The Woodman, we were talking about it. The 17th of May is when indoor hospitality can start again. At the moment, it's got to be outdoors, of course. And we haven't necessarily had the weather. It's been a bit cold. I don't know how you felt, but it's been a bit cold for the last... I've kind of felt sometimes that we're going back into winter rather than going into summer. But that being said, indoor hospitality starts again on the 17th of May, and we've got our first karaoke that's going to be taking place on the 19th of May. And one thing that was discussed is the fact that you're going to have people who are going to be coming in and are going to be just wanting to go straight back to normal, straight in, right, we've missed a year, let's catch up on it, and be very confident and want to get close to people and chat to people. But then you're going to have the other kind of person who are going to want to come out and enjoy themselves, but they want to quietly come out. They want to be confident that everybody else is going to be playing by the rules and that it is going to be a safe area for them. So it's making sure, I guess it's really those who are overconfident, just making sure that they are conscious of the fact that there are going to be people amongst them who are not going to be as confident as they are. Yeah,
I think that's a big thing, and I think we're, to an extent, you kind of rely on that community spirit of people being kind and recognising that, we're not all coming out of this in the same situation. I think the example you were giving makes me think of my sister owns a salon, and they were talking about kind of getting in some of the clear plastic dividers a couple of months ago, and they were sort of, do we wait and kind of stay closed and just open up once we don't need them, or do we open up and get these dividers that we're only going to need for a few months? And it was really interesting hearing her kind of talk through that idea of, well, we might only need them by law for the next few months, but actually we might have customers and clients that come in that actually quite want them, and will be reassured by the fact that we keep up these divides for a period of time and just see how it goes and see how people respond to that. And I think it's about providing that space as well for, if you do feel worried or unhappy or not sure about a particular situation, being able to know that you can step out of that. So like you say, if someone was involved in that situation and go, actually, do you know what, there's too many people or it's too loud, that they can kind of step out of the bar, go outside and have 5 minutes and then decide whether or not they want to go back in, and not kind of feel that self pressure or self kind of stigma of, I have to force my way through this, or I shouldn't feel this way. I think it's really important that we reckon we're all going to react in very different ways, and I think that's a really good example, because maybe they've been into a pub and they're like, okay, I've sat outside in the garden, or maybe back in October, I think, when you could go inside, maybe they've done that, and then they come along and go, actually, this is slightly different because there's singing and there's people moving around. So I think it's holding that space and having the opportunity for people to reflect on that.
Now, you mentioned the 21st. It is, of course, the 21st of June. That's when the government are hoping to be able to relax the social distancing rules. That's the 2 metre distance, and also the wearing of the masks as you move around indoors and all that kind of thing is likely to be relaxed. And I guess at that point we're really going to have to judge it, aren't we? Because there are going to be certain people who are still going to want to wear masks, and some people are still going to want to have that social distancing. So it's going to be a case of really judging the situation, isn't it, socially?
Yeah, I think we kind of talked a little bit about the indoors, and I think that's where it will become more tricky for people, because I think we're kind of June, July time, we're crossing our fingers, it'll be nice weather outside and there's a kind of more space, and I think that opportunity to gradually reintroduce yourself to social settings and kind of get outdoors, I think that's more possible in the summer. I think that in part is why we saw so many people struggling through the winter, because the outdoors became less and less accessible for people. So I'm hopeful that, that's a good time for that. But as you say, there will be a lot of us that maybe not too sure about how to approach things, about whether you want to continue with elements of social distancing or kind of wearing masks or whatever. And I think that's also hard because we don't know about the longer term journey of what's happening around COVID. There's been kind of that those early talks of this is going to be something that comes around each year or in the winter. It kind of got those flu crossovers. So I think this is where, again, it's about having those conversations with people and seeing what they're happy and they're comfortable with, because it might be that they want to continue distancing or wearing masks up until next spring, and that's maybe when they feel more comfortable.
With employers, they have got a bit of a dilemma, because as offices start to open again, there's going to be, I would imagine, a certain pressure on employees to go back to the office, but there's going to be some who are going to want to go back and have that interaction, and others who are just happy, even if it is just through the practicalities of working from home rather than travelling to an office and back again. People are going to want to continue doing it that way. So I guess it's a case of leaving the options open.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's adjusting, realising, like, working at home, some people did do it, but it was never kind of a widely accepted thing, I don't think. And actually now we've kind of had that year of experience of going, okay, this works. And I think particularly for smaller organisations, for charities, thinking about maybe a better use of their funds might be something that's happening. We've also seen some of the work that we do with workplaces has changed in regards to maybe slightly more awareness or more investment in mental health support, because we've just had a year where everyone's talking about mental health, well-being, realising that actually that kind of check-in conversation at the coffee machine or the water cooler on the stairs or wherever, that's not really happening now. And so to have that opportunity to check in needs to be a bit more proactive. So that's definitely something that we've seen kind of more businesses invest time in, and hopefully in the future funds as well, of being aware that actually we really need to think about, really need to engage with mental health support for employees. And I think that is maybe slightly different to community settings where they've kind of adjusted or reflected on the time that they have together. So if you're a member of like a sports club, maybe in the past you had like 1 or 2 hours training and maybe half a day for a match or a competition, kind of maximum each week. That time can to some extent be replicated online. You can have kind of online quizzes and chats and calls and things. But if you're in a workplace 9 to 5 days a week, how do you kind of pick up those opportunities to check in on your employees' well-being, on your colleagues' well-being? How do you keep that kind of staff engagement and kind of connectedness? So I think that's a real area that's kind of seen initial interest, and I hope that continues over the kind of the coming years.
Brilliant. Now, you mentioned that it's Mental Health Awareness Week next week, starting on the 10th of May. Now, tell us about the plans you have for that.
So yeah, for us, we're just trying to engage people in as many conversations and reflecting on the tools, the behaviours, the activities that they've done to support their well-being over the last year, and hopefully encourage those to continue, but also just the sharing of those conversations so that they might pick up an idea or a suggestion from someone else. while also kind of keeping that environment that this is an okay thing to talk about. It's okay to say, I really struggle in the mornings. Actually, it's really difficult to get out of bed and get started and kind of log in. And to hear maybe someone else say, well, actually, the way I try and start my mornings off is I just get up and have a shower straight away, or I do half an hour's exercise and then get started, or I spend time with a pet. I think kind of really normalizing those conversations is really important. And then for us, particularly this year, as mentioned, there's a focus on the outdoors and on nature. So we're trying to prompt some of those, because that is possibly kind of how most people have thought about kind of exercise and activity over the last year. As we mentioned, kind of the walking and running allotted time a little bit earlier. So yeah, trying to tie into the idea of that outside space is the theme, but anything that has supported your well-being. So we're going to have kind of some comms going out to our social media platforms and some of our partners as well, to share with their supporters and colleagues around some of those conversations and what people can do to kind of support their mental health, their well-being, by engaging in some of those outdoor activities. And I'm sure kind of, we've mentioned it a couple of times, but I'm sure there are things over the last year that you've done, Martin, that have been outside, that have kind of been supportive of your well-being.
Yeah, the biggest thing really is exercise, because I don't generally get a great deal of exercise. I always used to travel to and from by taxi at one point, and then when I started using the bus, mainly to save a bit of money, even if it gave me a bit more walking. But I've never really focused much on the exercise that I have until the lockdown. I have started to go out, not every day, because some days I think, well, I've got this to do, I haven't got the time, which is a bit silly really, but I have most days thought, well, I've got half an hour, I'm going to go out and walk for half an hour. So I have allotted myself exercise time, where I have never in my life done that previously.
That's very cool. I think it's that self-care side, isn't it, as much as anything? If we go, oh, I enjoy that, or I quite like that, but I've got all these other things to do. Like, I know from some of the material that we started to collect, the responses from some of our supporters, like they've spoken about even just things like having a little bit of time to sit outside at lunchtime, kind of gardening, even just kind of getting some potted plants and stuff for indoors, so it feels a bit more like it's outdoors. It can be really small things. I think it's again, in my mind, it comes back to that idea of kind of self-care and recognizing the importance of just giving a little bit of time for yourself. And hopefully, like I say, it's not been great weather the last week or so, but as we're coming into kind of later spring and early summer at some stage, I think hopefully kind of that is also an encouragement for people to utilize the spaces that they've got. Like I say, it might not be a huge space, it might just be a porch, it might just be a small outside space, but making the most of that, I think, is really important. And there's research that's been done by mental health charities, including Mind and the Mental Health Foundation, that have looked at kind of the impact of the outdoors and nature, and how that can support our mental health with things like, if you're struggling with low mood or stress or low self-esteem, having the outdoors, opening the windows, opening the doors, it all does have an impact. So I think that's a really important side. And I like that you kind of touched on the idea of maybe it's something small, maybe it's just making a little bit of time for yourself. It doesn't have to be half an hour or an hour, it might just be 5 minutes. I think that's really important, and hopefully that's something that we can kind of get across next week during Mental Health Awareness Week, that really those small things do make a big difference.
Yes, absolutely. It's coming to the end of our chats now, and I do wish you all the best for Mental Health Awareness Week next week, starting the 10th of May. But in the meantime, can you please give us the contact details for Havant and East Hants Mind, and some of the services you have available?
Yeah, sure. So as I said, I think one of the best places to go is to go over to the website. That's going to give you information about all of the different services and projects that we have running. So the website is easthantsmind.org. If you want to email us with a specific question, you can do that at info@easthantsmind.org, or you can phone our main office, which is 02392 498916. And we will have information going out on our social media channels. So we use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn as well. So you might see some information and posts and things going up during next week about some of the activities we're doing or the conversations that we're hosting and prompting as well.
Brilliant stuff. Can you just give that telephone number one more time?
02392 498916.
Okay, that's brilliant. Well, all I can say is Mike Locke, Head of Community Engagement at Havant and East HEH Mind. Thank you ever so much for joining us on the Chatterbox programme today. And before I let you go, would you like to choose a tune we can play for you?
Oh, I wonder. I don't have something in mind. If you've got anything that is, let's go something with no lyrics. If you've got anything with no lyrics, something nice and mindful that someone could put on and listen to in the background would be lovely. We've just spoken about kind of working from home, going and doing some activities, getting engaged with things. So I'm going to be really difficult and ask if you've got something with no lyrics.
I'll see what I can find. Nothing comes to mind at the moment, but I'm sure I can dig deep and find something to play it. It's just as well that this feature is recorded in advance, isn't it? So that gives me at least a day to come up with something, and listeners will hear it very shortly. Anyway, Mike, thank you for joining us, and take it easy, won't you, sir?
Cool. Thank you so much for having us on again, and I look forward to talking to you again soon, Martin. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you. Bye-bye.